District. And Joanne, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike.
One of the things we do together is there's about 12 folks appointed within the Congress to represent the United States at meetings of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, where we meet with our counterparts from the other 27 member countries within NATO. I recently completed a term as Vice President of the organization. It was an honor to do that, and I know you've been involved in leadership and elected roles within the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and maybe you could share with our viewers some of the important things that we try to do representing the United States at these meetings with our allies.
I'm glad you asked about that, because it's an important issue, and so many folks don't pay as much attention as we do as part of our jobs to what's going on around the world. But certainly our NATO allies have been very important as we have helped them rebuild Europe after World War II, and the relationships that we have with our parliamentary colleagues is significant to help us within policy. As you know, I actually chaired the Committee on the Civil Dimension of Security, which is basically the fancy name for Homeland Security, and my 2-year term ended this past fall when we had our last meeting in Bucharest, Romania. But, you know, I look back on this, Mike. If you'll recall, when we were at a meeting, we desperately needed to have our NATO ally help us with Afghanistan, and we had very significant meetings with our colleagues, and I think that really helped get much more buy-in among our allies and the parliaments within each of those countries on the whole Afghan mission, and that's been very successful. And I think were it not for our group and those relationships, we would have had a lot more trouble being able to share the burden of that. And I think it's critical. I mean, look at how our NATO ally. But also it's interesting the way that we have tried to push them. We spend a lot more of our gross domestic product on defense issues. And, I recall just kind of pushing them a little bit more. But I was actually proud of the work that they did in Libya, for example, with a little bit of American help. But really, they did most of it by themselves. And I think that shows that we don't always have to be heavily involved in all security-related matters.
NATO, and of course the U.S. being part of NATO, played an important role in Libya, liberated the people of Libya, and not a single American soldier died.
Exactly. And
it's a great success story.
It is, and we provided the piece of where we had expertise in air capabilities, and NATO did the other piece, and which I think is probably a good model for some of the future endeavors that we do, and certainly I think it made those countries recognize the need for more contributions to defense, because such a tiny portion of their budgets actually is devoted to that as compared to the U.S.
And in this post-9/11 era, I mean, our allies have always been important to us, but certainly in this post-9/11 era that we live in today, terrorism is not limited to America.
Oh, gosh, no.
It's targeted for all freedom-loving countries, and I think it's important that our allies, other freedom-loving countries, I think that relationship, that alliance that we have is more important now than perhaps any time in recent memory.
And I think, too, looking at different missions, for example, energy security, cybersecurity, I mean, all of us are very vulnerable to cybersecurity threats. Whether it doesn't matter from whom it is, but when you consider if you don't have the proper tools in place, everything, electric power grids can come down. Our defense forces are threatened, so it's good that we can work on this collaboratively.
And even the economy, whether we like it or not, the world's getting smaller and smaller. And when Greece can postpone a vote on solving their fiscal crisis, and hardworking folks in Arkansas and Missouri see their retirement savings reduced by 5 or 10% overnight.
Just because of that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it is very important that we have these relationships, and we've seen a number of folks that represented various countries within the NATO Assembly go on to become prime minister or some key leadership role, or a cabinet official within their government. And I don't have to tell you, there are a lot of things from Europe. A lot of companies in Europe actually have industry in Missouri and Arkansas where they put people to work and make things.
Well, they do.
And so we've got the economic aspect of it plays a very important role as well.